Hello fellow wizards, today we will discuss how you should choose your class on Maguss. When you start Maguss, you have to choose between 4 different classes. You can choose to play as a druid, as a rogue, as a warden, or as a paladin. But the hints given to you are maybe a little bit unclear. So we will be discussing in this video how the classes are different to help you choose. Now, even if you've already chosen, just stay with us, because you might actually learn some stuff about the other classes too. So what's different between the different classes, you might ask? 2 things. First of all, the attributes. It's empower, it's defense, evasion, and so on. And second thing, the spells. Let's review the spells in detail first. If you were to compare a druid and a warden, you would find out that majority of the spells are exactly the same, except for 4 or 5 class spells that are only available for certain classes. Let's start with the wardens. So the wardens are the tanky class of Maguss. They have high defense, high evasion, high HP, and their class spells are made to enhance this endurance. The first class spell they will have is Absorb. It's a shield that will block up to 50 damage for the during cycle. So even if the shield is not used up, it will disappear by the next cycle. The second class spell they have is Spirit Sense. The healing power of this spell is multiplied by the number of spells your opponent is casting during this cycle. So if your opponent is casting 5 spells of one slot, it will instantly heal you for 100 power. Next you have 2 similar spells called Dominate and Fire Trap. Dominate will increase your defense of 1% for every 15 damage you do to your opponent, while Fire Trap will increase your empower for every 10 damage you take from your opponent. So with Dominate, the more you hit, the less you feel damage, and with Fire Trap, the more you feel damage, the more you hit. The last spell is a Boomerang spell. It damages the opponent proportionally to the damage taken during that cycle. So the more you get hit, the more you hit back. Next class we can review is the Paladin. The Paladin can do only 2 things: hit hard and hit harder. But since they focus only on hitting, they get a lot of damages. The first class spell they get is Magic Missile. It will shorten up the time for the opponent to cast the spells. You normally have 10 seconds to draw the spells you want to cast during this turn, but with Magic Missile you have less time, so it's kind of a strategic advantage. The second spell they learn is Dark Force. It will allow them to hit even against monsters or players that have a very high evasion. The third spell is Astral Force. It will increase of 100% their empower when their max HP is under 25%. This will be very useful for emergency situations. The last spell they learn is Demon Sting, which is a spell which power increases every time it is used in the same fight. So the more you use it in a fight, the more powerful it gets. Now let's talk about the Rogue. Rogue are precision class. They don't hit hard, but they hardly ever miss. Their first class spell is called Spirit Dagger. It causes more damages for every sorcery spell used during the cycle by the opponent. The second class spell they have is Reveal. It allows you to see all your opponent's spells while they are being cast for 2 turns. The third class spell is called Alter Reality. It takes the opponent's base concentration and adds it to your evasion. It means that even if your opponent has a very high concentration, you will still be able to avoid their spells. And the last spell is called Insight. It will make them hit first for the next 5 turns. Now let's talk about the last class, the Druid. Druids usually have a bit of every class. The first spell they will learn is a protective spell, like the Wardens. It's called Safe Place, and it will avoid all the inflection spells for 2 turns. The second class spell they have is called Chaos. It will weaken their opponents by removing all the equipment bonuses. The third one is Chant. It has 1 chance out of 3 to cast a spell twice. The third spell they have is called Silence. It damages the opponent at the end of next cycle. And the more your opponent is using his spell slots, the more it's going to damage them. The last spell they have is called Grace. It reduces the hit cost of all the spells by 1 for 3 turns. Now that's it for the class spells. Let's have a look at the attributes. Let's compare first the starting attributes. Obviously, the Paladins will start with the higher Empower and the highest critical Empower, especially compared to the Wardens. The Druids are pretty average in every stats, and the Rogues have a very good concentration. Now, every time you gain a level, you can improve one of those stats by 1 point. You can do that a maximum of 15 times per stat. Since there's 50 levels, it means that you will be able to max out only 3 attributes and you will have a remaining of 5 points. Also, every 5 levels, every class will get some perk according to their specificities. So the Paladin will get 12 more Empower, 2 concentration and 6 critical Empower. The Rogues will get 15 more concentration and 7 more critical chances, while the Druid will get a little bit more of everything. Now this graph is showing you the maximum offensive stat that your character can have. Let's have a look at the defensive stats now. From the beginning, the Wardens have a high defense and a high evasion. You can also choose, of course, to invest your improvement points in defensive stats, maximum 15 per stats, and then you get the perks. The Warden get 12 in defense, 2 in evasion, and 80 extra max HP. The Rogue also gets 6 in evasion, and the Druid gets a little bit in everything. I added a link in the description so that you can have a closer look on those stats. Now, let's try again to answer the ultimate question. How do you choose your class on Maguss? Well, let me try to answer it with the last graph. But first of all, let me remind you that whichever class you play, the game is very well balanced, so you will not feel like you're missing out anything. But if I can advise you anything, I'd say you should choose according to the kind of gameplay you like. If you like long fights, using damage over time, I strongly suggest you enroll as a Warden. But if you just want to see big numbers at every turn, then I suggest you play as a Paladin. Druid, of course, will stay in the middle, with I think the Rogues, that will be very balanced. Now there's a second point that you might want to take into account when you're choosing a class. Usually, players prefer to have short fights and see big numbers. So I have the sneaky feeling that the Rogue and Paladins are going to be very popular. If you want to choose a class that not a lot of players play, I would strongly suggest you try to play a Warden or a Druid. Now that's it for this video. Please feel free to leave any questions in the comments and enjoy the game. See you around, wizards!